we were talking at my table earlier about what the best spot for speaking is, like in terms of time. So I was telling about my days in the brewing industry. You never wanted the morning slot because people were drinking the night before. So if you got the 10 o'clock slot, that was just bad. Never a 9 o'clock slot. We just gave up on that. You didn't want the afternoon slot at like 4 because people were already drinking again. You didn't really want the afternoon or after lunch slot because people were tired because they were just kind of coming off their coffee and just had lunch. So the pre-lunch slot was the best. So we'll see how I can do with you guys in your post-lunch digestion, relaxation phase. So what I'm going to be talking about is really building a purpose-driven company. And I'm going to use Southwest. I didn't want to use it, but it's the one we all know, I think. We've heard about their purpose, and it really shows through in their customer service. Have you guys flown Southwest? Yeah, and it's a different kind of thing. And the reason I decided to use them is because I have a friend that's a flight attendant for Southwest. And she's always on her Insta stories. And what's beautiful about her Instagram stories is she's a brand ambassador for the company because we get to see through her stories how life is really lived inside the company. And ultimately, that's what you want to get. Purpose-driven companies it's a disciplined way of bringing the customer every day to everyone. It's a more profitable way because everyone is a brand steward in the company. Everyone's a steward for your idea. And so it's bringing this together so everyone can be pulled together. And that's really what we did at New Belgium. I didn't bring my clicker. You were just waiting for me to do it. At New Belgium was bring this all together. So you guys have heard of Dunbar's number? Anyone? It's a magical number of 150 that basically says that a community, once you get kind of around that time or above 150, it gets harder to keep everyone together. It gets harder to keep everyone aligned. So I started at New Belgium back in 2004. We had about 170 people when I started. So we were just passing that Dunbar's number of where there has to be a more calculated effort to bring a community of people together. When I left last year, we were in the 800s. So over that course of that time, we grew quite a bit. But the company is the classic entrepreneurial company. Has anyone been there? There's a brewery in Fort Collins. Couple people. There's also a brewery in Asheville, North Carolina. So there's 2 breweries in the US, national distribution, but it started in the basement of Kim and Jeff's house. And so it's the classic story, like a lot of you guys have in here too, of growing something together. Employee ownership in some ways started because the first employees were given equity because they couldn't really afford paychecks. And you know what that's like is when there's just not enough money, so you have to find a different way to pull people in. And Kim and Jeff had this very wise sense about them in starting a business. One of the classic stories is they went on a hike, and that's where they wrote their first values for the company before the company even had employees or was really in business. So they're thinking about this from the get-go of being a very holistic, humble, values-driven business. But then the challenge comes in when you're trying to grow and scale up a company. Because what we learn through experience, through business school, wherever, is there's certain ways to professionalize a company. You put divisions in, you put departments in, you silo things. Before I came from a pretty big corporation before I worked at New Belgium. I actually worked in the Kantar silo. They called it a silo. Sometimes you'll call it like the West Coast division, the East Coast division. You're going to put people in a department and kind of shoehorn them in there and make sure they, stay in their shoe and make sure they stay there. And we don't mean to do this. This is just the way we've come to know that businesses are supposed to operate. They're supposed to be compartmentalized. We're supposed to focus people, get them to be efficient. And what I'm going to tell you today is efficiency is an outcome of being an effective company. Go for effectiveness first, then get efficient. You want things to be effective. So I started there in 2004. We scaled up. When I started, we were 32% ESOP owned. So ESOP is employee stock ownership plan, but we always had a very democratized capital system inside the company. There was always broad-based profit sharing. There was a phantom stock plan. We went 100% ESOP in 2012. And so that meant this trust, this employee stock ownership trust, owns the company. And so everyone is a participant inside that trust. And so this feeds a very, very synergistic system with a lot of reciprocity in it. And I'm not saying everyone has to be employee-owned, but there's ways of sharing the capitalistic experience with everyone that works in the company. And that creates the shared profit motive for everybody. And once you can get everyone galvanized around it, that's a big deal. But so I've heard some people say, well, New Belgium, you sell beer, so it's easy to do. I guarantee you, well, I know. I've been in some of them, and maybe some of you have too. All craft breweries are not run democratically. All craft breweries are not happy, fun places. All breweries aren't happy, fun places. So just because you make beer doesn't automatically mean there's like this magical Kool-Aid. Well, for us there was, but because you could drink. That's available there. And you can't see the slides. There's some numbers on the slide. So the business case around this, you guys have heard the Gallup engagement surveys, right? So last year, it was like 71% of employees aren't engaged in their job. Talk about a waste of money. You're hiring people, paying good wages, doing all these wonderful things, throwing parties, having great perks, blah, 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 and 70-some% aren't engaged. That's a problem, and it's a waste of money. It's a lot of money just sitting on the table. But when you do have engaged employees, they're 2 times more likely to be involved in the business and do things that supports the business. So we have both sides of that scale where engaging people makes a more profitable business, but not engaging them is a huge waste of money. So that's the number on the side, 71%. 90, so this is a really interesting thing. Doug Holt, if you've never read any of his writing, we used him. He's a Harvard professor and really works in marketing and branding. And then this other fellow, Simon, I'm not gonna say his name right, Manaweg. He worked for Ogilvy and Mather, which is a subsidiary of WPP where I came from. They found that 91% of consumers will switch to a purpose-driven brand if the price and quality were relatively equal. And so if you have a high quality product, you know you can have a higher price for that as well too. But consumers will switch. There's a business case for this. And then the other one I think is really important. John Cotter, if any of you guys have gone to business school, you've read, he's like a mandatory reading in business school, but they did a 10-year study and purpose-driven companies outperformed their counterparts in the stock market by 12 times. It's a big deal. And these systems are complex systems. And so if it's so profitable, why isn't everybody doing it, would be the question, is because it's a complex system. It's easier to design a hierarchy. Just put command and control in and tell people what to do. Done. Check. It's easier, but it's not as effective. And so what I'm going to hopefully show you today is how to be more effective. So this is my graphic of what I call the cascading business model. Now there's a couple things to keep in mind. So we're not spending a whole lot of time together today, but all of this relies on 2 fundamentals, trust and transparency. If you don't have trust in a workplace, this won't work. If you're not at some degree transparent, it really doesn't work either. So those 2 things have to come behind it. And the other part of this concept is that you have concept, construct, and cohesion. So concept are your company philosophies. They have to be grounded in real. You know, just like Jeff and Kim went and climbed the mountain, and I think she would say it was probably more of a hike, but it sounds more dramatic when I say they climbed the mountain. But they went to the mountains and wrote this, and they were really clear on their concept, their philosophies, what they wanted behind this. And so that was incredible. The construct is the construction that you put around it. If you want those concepts to come into fruition, you have to put a framework around them to make them happen. And then the last one is cohesion. Everybody has to cohere around this idea. People have to want to be a part of the community. So hiring and choosing people that are going to join your community is absolutely critical. I love the comment on that first follower video. Has anyone actually seen that? I think you can just put it in YouTube and put first follower. Actually, it makes me, my daughter and I went to like a a super like hippie concert not that long ago. It happens all the time. But somebody's just like dancing like crazy, and people will follow them and like start dancing with them, and then all of a sudden you have a movement. That's what the video is. And we were at this concert, I don't know, that's a whole other story, but you know, and you'd see this, just people having so much fun in dancing, and there's levity and all this stuff, and people want to follow it. So the concept and the construct are so important, because then you can create cohesion with that, but getting people and being choosy about who joins your community is really important. So those things are really important that goes behind this. This is not a panacea, but it's a structure, it's a construct around how to do this. So the first part is purpose and values. So we know the purpose, I think using it in the verb and noun form are really important. So everything you do inside the company should be done with attention and intention. So pay attention to everything. Every little thing counts. Humans are meaning-making beings, and so everything will make meaning. Every symbol, everything that you do. If you give anniversary awards out to people, one of the things that we did at New Belgium is after 1 year you get a cruiser bike. Part of the brand, right? Part of our ethos, part of the environment, part of that. It's symbolic. At 5 years, you got to go on a beer education trip, not drinking trip, drinking education trip, to Belgium. Because being part of the roots of the company and understanding where we came from was really important. Also learning more about European beer culture was important. Not the kind of American, I'm gonna drink a whole bunch of light lager, you know, at the game of having true respect for the craft of what brewers do. It was a big deal, this craft brewing. So it wasn't just brewers that went there, everyone went there because everyone matters. So getting really clear around purpose and values. And you'll have these slides, but I put these questions on there just so you can go back to your workplaces and think about these things and make sure that you can answer these questions, whatever they are, because it's incredibly important. The next one is values. So values is how you're gonna live. It's the behavioral expectations in the company. Now, I'll read to you a couple of New Belgiums. Promoting beer culture and the responsible enjoyment of beer was one of our values. How is that lived inside the workplace? People could have one shift beer, after shift, we should have called it one after shift beer, in the workplace. And so you could get free, we called it e-beer, employee beer. With those rights that we gave people came an incredible amount of responsibility to be responsible with alcohol. Also in our benefits programs, we did extra benefits around substance abuse, because we're doing something that's a drug and people need help sometimes with those situations. So all of these things have to have lived norms behind it. So taking values to norms is one of the most important things. Another one is, well, let's just do having fun. You know, we wanted whimsy, we want levity, and it's also a job, and we have to really be co-determined around making this thing happen. So what does levity and fun look like in the day? Those are norms. Those are your norms. So figuring out a way to take the values to norms, and we would do this, we would re-norm a lot of times, because a norm for a remote employee, so about 40% of the workforce at New Belgium is remote across the US. There's about 120 in Asheville, North Carolina, and about 400 in Fort Collins. So a norm for a remote employee in terms of how they interact is going to be different than somebody in Fort Collins or different in Asheville, but the values are the same. So here's some other questions. Values should also help you make decisions. Rule-based companies, well, they're boring. You just like look up a rule and figure out what you're supposed to do. Or better yet, when you're in human resources, like you fire people for breaking the rules. Not at all fun, I'm being sarcastic. So when you have a values-driven workforce, it enables people to have agency at the individual level. They get to make choices. And your value system should help you make choices. So back to environmentalism, that came up a lot this morning. Environmental stewardship, honoring nature at every turn of the business. Every turn of the business. It's part of your DNA. It's not a program. You don't have an environmental program that you go do. In your job, you don't print a bunch of printer paper out and leave it on the copier. That happens in every workplace. It shouldn't happen in an environmental company. Water bottles. We always use glassware for everybody. We'd have glasses in all the kitchens because water bottles are bad. It does a lot of damage. We can't handle the number of water bottles we have. So every little thing counts. Think about all the symbolism that's going on in the daily actions of your company. What are those? This is why values matter. And then the mission. Okay, so now we're going to go down a level. We're getting philosophy and values are more in that concept realm, philosophical. Mission, you're starting to home in on what is it you're trying to do. Mission statements are usually 3 to 5 years, but what is the winning idea behind it? And this is really important for getting everybody on board and hiring people, is you want them to be a part of the winning idea. What is the winning idea? What are you going after? Why does it matter? Those are incredibly important. And then how are you going to know you're making progress? It's your roadmap. How do you know when you're going to steer off? And sometimes going off the roadmap, especially if there's a traffic jam, is okay, but you need to keep pointing to this North Star or the peak. We use mountains a lot as our metaphor. So what is your peak? What's your longs peak that you're headed for? So you constantly know what that is and you can constantly bring people into that. Now, all this kind of comes together and we get into the business plan, integrated team plans, specialized team plans, and goals. And this is where the discipline comes in. So I am not a fan of hierarchy. One of the things I call myself is a corporate reconstructionist and culture chemist. I think we need to reconstruct the way we've come to know corporations have to be organized. And so this is where it comes down to. When you have a purpose-based business, you're oriented to your purpose, which a lot of you are, but are you organized around your purpose? So rather than organizing people based on what they do, you organize people on who and what they serve. So when you do your strategic plan, or I'm not a fan of like annual plan, strategic plan, it's a plan, it's your business plan. Don't make it too complicated for people to understand. So you have your business plan. Are people organized to make that plan happen? Or do you have them in departments? So we're gonna just plug those people over there, and I'll tell you, when you make human resources or sustainability the only ones who are responsible for driving some kind of social system or environmental system, it's harder to get people on board with that. You can have champions, but you need to marshal the talent behind those initiatives. And it can be any talent. So one reason, like at New Belgium, we'd have a lot of committees, but make sure the committees are responsible for an action. They have to come behind something that's in the business plan. So don't just organize committees so people can talk. Who loves meetings? Nobody raised their hands. I don't like meetings. I like doing things, and people like doing things. I guarantee if you have several employees, when you say that you gotta have a meeting, I bet you most people are like, uh-oh. So don't have meetings, plan around them. Use the time to create something. Eileen Fisher came up this morning, and I had the opportunity to talk to them one time because we were having so many meetings, because it's a highly collaborative company. So when you have people that collaborate, you're gonna meet a lot. So figuring out how do you turn those meetings from talking about things to doing things. You're meeting to do things, and that's a big deal. The integrated team plans. So again, don't call groups by departments. Call them by what they serve, because every little thing matters. Who do you serve? What are you there to do? So to give you an example of that, we at one point had groups that were just called maintenance, because that's what they did, maintain. That's soon kind of became siloed into, let's just maintain stuff. That wasn't their purpose. Their purpose was to support every brewer, packager, warehouse people in getting the beer out the door. Their purpose is to put great beer in the hands of great consumers, and those great consumers put profit back in our pockets so we can do really cool stuff for the environment. We can accomplish the mission. New Belgium's mission our purpose statement was to operate a profitable company that lets our love and talent manifest. And then we changed it slightly, to manifest our love and talent by crafting our consumers' favorite brands and proving business can be a force for good. So your job isn't to maintain the equipment. Certainly that's what you do. Your job is to prove that business can be a force for good by putting the drinks in consumers' hands. Everyone's job is that, first and foremost. But then you're probably on some kind of specialized team where you focus on your specialty, but that's just what you clock in for. It's not who you are and why you exist in the company. So these things are really big deals. And then sooner or later, it all goes down to individual goals. We talked about performance evaluations, and in the HR world, the big thing is like, don't do performance reviews anymore. I actually disagree with that. I don't think doing like cumbersome competency-based, ones that have 1,000 questions are worth it. If you can't remember what your performance is for, then you shouldn't be doing it. So the way we did it was 4 basic questions. How do I show up? That's your values and norms. What am I capable of now and in the future? That's the development. So can I do my job and everything else I do well now? And what am I capable of giving in the future? Because we need everybody to always be growing inside our companies, because the marketplace changes, our economic system changes, and if we're not changing and growing, we're not going to be ready to respond to those challenges. So everybody has to be developing. So what am I capable of now and in the future? What do I contribute, or what results do I get? Because results are important in these companies. And we have to realize that sometimes people individually can't get results themselves, or else it wouldn't be a collaborative workspace. Maybe a salesperson, you can get so many accounts. In the beer world, we call them handles. But most people have to contribute together, and they have to contribute something to the company. Everybody needs to be growing value. So 3 core questions, that's it. Everyone can remember them. The 4th one is goals. How am I doing on my goals? And I know like goals are blah, 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 just great goals. We changed it. So you guys have heard of SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable. We changed the acronym. So if it's specific, you've already put your measurement systems in place. In your specific, you've painted a picture of what winning looks like. M is motivational. What motivates me to want to accomplish this goal? Write it down. And then the R is it relatable? How does it relate to the mission, purpose, and values, the vision of the company? And you write these things down because throughout the year, things come up, work gets hard. You need to be able to go back and say, wait a minute, I remember when I developed this goal, this is why it was important to me. This is what keeps it motivational to me. This is how I connect to the business. This is why my goal of, doing X amount of pallets of beer matters to the company. And so you always have those in place. And don't make individual goals annual. It's too long. We don't think in calendars, really. Financials are thinking in calendars for sure. Banks think in calendars. The stock market thinks in quarters. But as individuals, we can't go out that long. We need more faster incremental goals. So if you have a list of 10 goals for a year, I've done that. Have you guys 10 goals in a year, and you have this whole list of stuff, and then you're exhausted because you can't achieve any of them? Do 2 or 3 every 12 or 15 weeks. Keep it rapid, keep it action, keep it relatable to the purpose, mission, values. Everybody needs to be oriented to it. It needs to be part of your DNA. So where do you start? So there's 3 keys here. You can't read them, but I'll tell you anyway. One is alignment. Everybody has to be aligned to the business plan. That's a big deal. Everybody has to know what the business plan is. This goes back to transparency. What's your winning score? How am I going to get there? How does my work matter? How do I contribute to the company? The second thing is common unity. So this is unity to the purpose and values. When you build community in a workforce, it's not just about having parties, and we had a lot of great parties at New Belgium. It helps when you have free beer there, it makes them cheaper. But what is that unity that you're developing? And you constantly work at developing this unifying force around your purpose and values. Common unity, and then the third one is co-determination. Everybody has to be collectively determined to achieve that same outcome. So back to your mission statement. What is the winning thing that you're trying to do? What's your distinctive value proposition? Everyone started a business in here because they thought that there was something that they could offer to the marketplace that's unique and distinctive and special. So how do you get everybody oriented around this? It's easy when you're small to be a little bit more tribal about this and to say, you know, keep everybody together and keep everybody aligned. But again, once you start getting over 100, 150 people, you have to put more structures in place because it gets harder to kind of keep your arms around everything. And it's really, you could say it's about control, but I think it's more about order and focus and keeping everybody focused on the mission. So these are some of my coworkers, and they're still my friends. So this is in the packaging hall. One of the things that we would do is, people had to go through an employee ownership speech. And so when you became an employee owner, you had to stand up in front of all your co-owners and answer some questions. And our posse group, which is ESOP misspelled backwards, would facilitate this event. And so some of the questions would be like, when was the first time you felt like an owner? What advice would you give to the longer tenured people in the company? So it's really celebrating the new owners that are coming in to help us contribute and grow the company. How can we learn from new people that are coming into the company? Back to attention and intention, everything should have one. The intention of this is to help us learn, help us grow, and welcome new people into it, and plus just to have a ton of fun. The other one you can't see is a bunch of people. We would give each department $100 per head per year in their budget to have a fun day. And they could do whatever they wanted with it. So if you were in a small department, or a small team, it's better to join up with another team because then you'd have more money. Sometimes they'd like rent a boat, or some teams would just go up and go hiking or camping, or some teams were really frugal. It doesn't cost a lot of money to do this stuff. There's a lot of stuff and resources available around us that you can just have fun. But culture is a pattern of attitudes and actions. Parties and celebrations are an outcome of that. Culture is not a party. Culture is not a perk. Culture is not getting free coffee. We had really good coffee. Culture is not getting free beer. Those are outcomes of a great company. The culture is the attitudes and action that everybody puts into it. So what I want you guys to think about is your frame of focus. Can't see that one over there. If any of you guys have been near Aspen, that picture was Maroon Bells. Has anyone been there? It's beautiful. It's incredible. The other one is obviously an aspen grove, and then the third one is just an aspen leaf. So tomorrow, I gave Caitlin a worksheet, and one of the things that you can challenge yourself on is doing a self-assessment in terms of where does your time go. If you're spending all of the time focused on the aspen leaf, and you're missing out on the Maroon Bell's incredible alpine lake blueness, that's a problem. It doesn't mean finances and quality aren't important. They're incredibly important. But the finances are a snapshot of the business plan. The finances are an outcome of the business plan. So if all you're doing is talking about those without constantly coming back to the why for it, what's our purpose, what does this mean, and bringing everybody up to see the big picture, you will get people narrowly focused. And then the Aspen Grove, if you want to build community and team and you want everybody rallying around each other and behind each other and helping everybody do good work, you have to focus on the community too. But you should be spending more time on the big picture. Every time you do a all-staff meeting or an all-hands or town hall or whatever those are, how much do you bring up the big picture again? How much do you remind people what your distinctiveness is? How much do you remind people of what your purpose is? So then they can get rallied around the things at the aspen leaf. But you always have to have that rallying cry. So where to start? That's actually some pretty, it's easy. Just take has everybody watched The Matrix? I gotta see if you guys are awake. Nobody's seen The Matrix? Okay. Do you remember which pill you have to take, or you should take? So the red pill takes you into the more rewarding, harder place. The blue pill keeps you in the matrix, where you're theoretically happier, but not really because you're in dreamland. So We're going to take the red pill and choose the harder thing. So I think there's 5 things, and this, what I'm talking about, is really only one, but for people in these companies, leading self is really important. So if we can lead ourselves, every person in the company has to be a self-leader and have self-respect, respect other people, and do all that kind of stuff. That kind of communication is a big deal. And at New Belgium, we would teach crucial conversations. We would take people through emotional intelligence training and all that kind of stuff. But trainings are only a starting point for these things. So remember the 70-20-10 rule. 70% of learning happens on the job. 20% of learning happens interacting with each other, and only 10% comes from training. So if you send people for training and expect them to come out magically changed, you took the wrong pill. You took the blue pill and you're still in the matrix. So you've got to do more on the job, in-person interaction with people. Even if you have a remote staff, there's ways to get people getting involved in the remote staff. So leading with others is a big deal. Leading the business, leading commerce. Everybody in the company should be responsible for leading commerce in some way. Back to Southwest, New Belgium. If you walk into one of the New Belgium breweries, there's a magnetic electricity that happens. People smile. I remember walking through the hallways when we'd have guests come in, they'd be like, people are smiling. Like, yeah, is that an unusual thing? People don't smile on the job anymore? People don't smile on the job anymore. Smiles is a tangible way of measuring something in the day of how happy people are. It's not just about making people happy. They're happy because they were contributing to something that had more meaning and then was bigger than themselves. So that's a big deal. And then people leading with the controlling interests. And this goes to shareholder transparency or any kind of transparency. If you've had to take private equity money or a loan from the bank, you're in debt. A lot of businesses have to do that. Kim and Jeff took out a mortgage and credit card statements or credit card debt to fund the beginning of New Belgium. If you're not transparent of what the controlling interests are in your company and how these relate, people can't connect to that. They need to know what the challenges are. Tension in business is a good thing. This isn't about, happy, polite cultures are bad. People that respect each other are good. Creating tension in the workplace is good because tension is something we grow from. Back to teaching people crucial conversations. How do you have a really hard conversation and not hurt a relationship? We need to have those hard conversations. So people need to know what the controlling interests are and how to lead with them. If you're in debt, people need to know that because it'll matter. And it actually helps people because they can plan for their future. If you're a small business just getting started out, they need to know that for themselves and they will feel respected and they will respect the business more. So where to start? Focus on leader mindset. Somebody said it earlier today that the CEO emits the culture, and that's true. Anyone who's a leader in the company needs to lead using a servant leadership style. They serve the business through serving people in the company. That's it. You serve the business by serving others. You serve your consumers, you serve your employees, you serve other stakeholders, but that's what it is. It's not all about the owner, it's not all about the founder. Once you hire people, it becomes about those people. It's also about your consumers. So that's a really, really important place to start. And then focus on where value is created. So sometimes this is different than profit, and it changes based on the stage of your business. Netflix, for example, they're not really making any money, but they have a ton of value. So for your business, where is value being created? So for the beer business, where do you think value comes from? Do you think it comes from the beer? It doesn't. When you guys go out to any bar, any grocery store, any liquor store, you can choose 100, 200 brands, right? What makes you choose that one? The same thing, it's the same dynamic in any consumer packaged good. There's X amount of shelf space, and you have to get the consumer to choose you. Where is value created? It's created in your brand. It's created in that conversation that you have with the consumer at the shelf or online or through social media. That's your brand. And you build authentic brands by being purpose-driven. My friend at Southwest, I actually like Southwest a little bit more. I hate the whole seat thing. I'm one of those who actually doesn't like it, but I have more respect for them now that I see her life through social media. If you have an authentic brand, I know a lot of people at New Belgium have social media that's publicly available. You can see my Instagram. They see our lives and how we're living our brand. So when you can bring that intersection together, it's incredibly important. And then the other thing is focus on effectiveness first. Don't focus on efficiency. So one of my stories around this is we at New Belgium got a really great national contract with a big place. I won't say who. And we were going to get this to distribute our beer, but they wanted a certain package formation, a certain larger can. And we did the pro formas on it, a really profitable product. So we're like, okay, we're going to do this. So it came from, really sales and our executive team. Like, okay, we're gonna do this. Well, it rolled down to the people who packaged the beer, and they were super frustrated because they had created measurements around their success of being efficient. So when you have to shut down a line, any kind of manufacturing line, reconfigure it, figure out how to make a bigger beer, and then do all this stuff, they were down for, at one point, like 8 hours. They got really good at it over time and lessened the downtime, but they were super frustrated. And so we do these things, these annual retreats where we bring everybody together. And we ask these provocative questions, we spur on debate and great conversations. As leaders, we got to ask people, find out what they think, what they know, get employee insights, because people are smart. And you want to hear what they have to say. And so in my particular session, this came up of where the people who were packaging the beer and the people that were selling the beer were at conflict with one another. Because the people packaging the beer were like really mad because we messed with their efficiency ratings. They became less efficient. Now, what do you think a high profit product did for the company? Made it more effective because we got that financial engine churning behind us. So they were focused on being efficient over being effective. And so this is why the purpose-driven company works, is that was a huge sign for us as a leadership team, is we were getting siloed. We had these people super frustrated because they thought they were losing the game. They weren't losing the game, they were playing the wrong game. We want them to play the game of winning inside the business, not just winning the efficiency thing. So be effective first and focus everyone on being an effective organization. And if you've written a good business plan, they will know that. So the leadership mindset, you cannot read any of these, and I can't remember them off the top of my head. So number 1 is be relentless about purpose, mission, and values. Always recite it. It should be your mantra. Everybody should know it. Maybe not word for word. Don't get that weird about it because our values were super long and nobody could recite them word for word because they were full of like really nice, meaningful, flowery words. But everybody knew what they meant. So people should know what that is. Number 2, transparency. Being an open book company is really, really beneficial. It's scary to some people because you think transparency means you have to share salaries and all this stuff. You don't have to. There's a spectrum of transparency that you can orient yourself around. And I think opening the book slowly is a little bit better than just like tearing off the Band-Aid and like all of a sudden making everything transparent. But the more people can understand the business, the more they can contribute. People support what they help create. Transparency will help you do that. Open book management is not open book reporting either. So you might say, well, we're OBM. I get up and tell people what's going on. You're open book reporting. You're just reporting it. Open book management is getting people to the stage where they can use the company financials to build better teams. So that's a big deal. Number 3, hire for a servant leadership attitude for everyone, not just leaders. Everybody needs to be oriented around this way of, my job is to help you be a better person. Another company I work with, they've written it out really well. So their core purpose is to help others become more successful in work and life. That's it. They do food service for convenience stores. That's their purpose. It's about me helping you. It's about you helping me. It's about us helping each other. So everyone in the company should be oriented around a certain leadership attitude. Build community. Create serendipitous opportunities to do stuff. I have a friend that works at Zappos, and one of the things that they did when they implemented holacracy, which, it became more democratic, which is generally a good thing, but there were different kitchens. And so one of the things Tony Hsieh was really adamant about was creating these places where people could have serendipitous interactions. So you'd be in the kitchen, or you'd be walking through hallways, or you'd be getting to work in the morning, and you'd bump into each other. And you get to say, hi, how are you? How are your children? How's your dog? By the way, my dog's hashtag is Adventure of Milo Briggs. So you'll see him up in the mountains. But you get to have and build those relationships. So creating opportunities for people to build relationships. And don't over-facilitate it. Have fun. Just enjoy each other. And it can happen during the day. And the fifth one there is distribute leadership. So one of the things about distributed leadership, it never means you give away your leadership. Leaders always keep leadership. They start distributing responsibility, power, and control, though, and getting used to that over time. And the more people understand the financials, the more people understand the business plan, you can give that away and give responsibility away. The big thing now in the whole work world is we need people to take more accountability. You can't take accountability unless you have responsibility. So people need to start giving that away and giving agency away. So if I know what my job is, I know what purpose I serve in the company, I know what our values are, I know how we make choices, I can have more autonomy. Make sense? And so the other one is scoring. I'm not going to go through a lot of this. We're running short on time, but I'm sure a lot of you guys have done this. The full thing will be in your packet if you're interested. But there's a ton of stuff written about this. The balanced scorecard. We have triple bottom line. And so figuring out what is your business score. Certainly there's times in business, the SRC Holdings, who is the company that owns Great Game of Business, their story is a classic of where they were in financial hardship. And they used a critical number around driving revenue to make them successful. Critical number in that situation is the right one. But then other times, it's better to have other measures. So how are you doing on sustainability? How are you doing with the organizational capital inside the company? And when you can have these more balanced approaches to business, I think it's better. So having a more holistic approach on how you measure it. Back to B Corp assessment. New Belgium was a B Corp. And so how are we going to measure what's important? We also were a World Blue company, which measures democratic management. And one of the things I noticed, so this is like when I got more into academia, I pulled all of our data for a decade. And I noticed the years that we had more profit and more revenue were preceded by higher democratic management on our scores. So the more leaders were distributing their leadership, responsibility, and accountability, those years were followed with higher revenue and profit. It works. It really does. You're not going to see it on a quarterly basis, but you might see it on an annual basis, and we definitely saw it on an annual basis. Then I'd see our democratic scores slip. Our revenue and profitability would go down. Can't say causation, but there was a correlation, and that's a decade of measurement there. So measure what matters, classic Drucker stuff, but make sure you really are measuring what matters. If you're only measuring profit, that's all people will focus on will be profit. If you want something in the social capital, measure something in the social capital. And then integrate the work. Crush your departments. Crush them. Get rid of them. Stop. Just get rid of them. When you do your strategic plan, figure out how do you need to organize all the talent around accomplishing those things in your plan. Marketing is probably the best and easiest example. In our best days, I think, we had the Tinker campaign. We had these beautiful commercials. Doug Holt was involved. Greg Owsley was our chief branding officer. The whole company rallied around that campaign. Branding was the catalyst, but one of the reasons it worked is because lifestyle brands hit this magic place where it's the zeitgeist of Americans, in our example. We hit that place, and then the brand identity matched up to that, but more importantly, the internal culture was driving the brand identity. That's an authentic brand. Customers will figure it out when you're being disingenuous. We have a sense for these kinds of things where you're like, I don't know about this company. When you think there's something behind it, and I know I do this, when I know companies, not any of you, of course, there's a company I have in mind, but I don't want to bash them, but when they outsource a lot of their manufacturing to places that don't have ethical conduct, but yet they want to be a powerful brand, well, it's Nike. I'm one of those people that loves their campaign, and there's a lot of not good labor practices going on in that company. So I have a hard time with it. I would really be more in favor if they could get the whole holistic machine rallied around doing good for a lot of people. So these are those things. And then the last one there is participation and tension, engage it. So don't be afraid of tension. Don't be afraid of conflict. You need conflict in the workplace. If everybody's being too nice and people aren't debating, that's a huge red flag. If everybody's friends, that's not a bad thing, but if everybody's too friendly and not able to say, you know what, I think you're wrong here. Those are huge red flags that we need to talk about. Tension will grow the product. Tension will encourage higher quality. Tension will do a lot of good things in the workplace, but that only happens if you have trust. If people trust each other, they can engage in really productive debate. When there's no trust, debate goes very destructive. So think about those things. So again here, the goal, company success. That's it. You know, we talk about all these soft cultural things. And I'm like, does it really create value? It really does create value. So if you're going to remember this, alignment, this is actually a row, or people rowing. So getting everybody rowing in the same direction, getting everybody pointed to whatever your true north is, whatever your Pikes Peak is. Create a common unity. Create the common unity around your purpose and values, and then get everybody co-determined to accomplish it, where everybody's contributing together. If you can do those three things, you'll make it. It'll be great. So thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Wow. Lots of tips and pointers there on how you actually go from being purpose-driven to implementing a structure inside of your company that can make that happen. So thank you so much. And she's going to be here all day, so you guys are going to get to ask some questions. And I do want to have time for maybe just 2 questions, if anyone has something that they want to ask Jenny before we move on to our next thing. Oh, yes.
Are we just yell?
Yes.
I think what I understand the difference between alignment and co-determination. They seem like the same thing.
Well, aligning is making sure all the work is aligned, that it's all running together, so you don't have people doing that. Co-determination is about getting the winning score. It's about what is going to make us the best company ever. So aligning the work, for example, in my beer example, where the packagers and the salespeople had different ideas on what winning was, their work was actually aligned. We were making the beer. It's about what is going to make us the best company ever. It was going out, it was going to the customer, but they weren't co-determined around what winning looked like. They should have both been determined to really get great beer in the customer's hands. One group was determined to get really efficient and high quality. Not bad, but when that efficiency gets in the way of being more effective, innovation is probably an even better example. When you innovate a new product or when you introduce something new, you will go slow. It's part of the learning process, it's normal. You will go slower, and people will be frustrated because they're not able to do things because this other new stuff is getting in the way. So you can align the work and get everybody doing it, but the co-determine is the emotional commitment to get it done and get that winning scoreboard, even if it means I'm gonna lose. I've given away budget money in human resources to people in the marketing branding because we were co-determined to get behind the brand. I mean, do you guys have people, when you do budgeting, that will easily give money away to another department because they know that work is more important for the business? That's co-determination. If you're fighting from money, which is, I just use that because almost every happens in every company. Like, I need this, I need this. Everybody's work can still be aligned to getting it done, but they're not determined to the same outcome. It's hard to give up learning and development money. And I knew it was in the best interest of the business. And you know what? More importantly than what I knew, my team knew. When I tell them, guess what, we just cut our budget, they're like, all right, so where's it going? Do you have that kind of response? That's a pretty big deal. So that's kind of the difference between it. Does that make sense? Does that help? Okay.